Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The unified heavyweight champion Andy Ruiz Jr. is vowing to end Anthony Joshua's career when the pair meet on December 7th in Saudi Arabia for their much-anticipated rematch. Ruiz Jr. winning the first fight on June 1st in dramatic fashion, one of the biggest heavyweight upsets of all time. It's either repeat or revenge. It's a pretty simple equation. Joshua wants to get his belts back. Ruiz Jr. wants to prove it wasn't a fluke and that he can dominate Joshua again. And I'll get to his quotes in a second from a post on social media, but also in this video, just wrapping up a little bit of other news that's happened in the past day or so. There was some legal action that was launched, but that has now concluded. This is from the Matchroom side. Obviously, this out-of-the-ring sort of drama that's happened in recent weeks with Ruiz Jr. initially bulking at traveling to Saudi Arabia, but he's managed to squeeze out a new deal. But obviously, some legal action had been launched by Eddie Hearn, Joshua's promoter, when things were obviously starting to get to a point in the conversation where the lawyers needed to come in. But Ruiz Jr. has squeezed out some more money. Some of the details have started to come out now with some of the other sweeteners that are part of it. You have experienced officials, a referee, and also the judges have to be sufficiently experienced. There is also going to be significant and comprehensive VADA testing for the fight. There has been some reports that Ruiz Jr. will get a cut of the Mexican pay-per-view portion from this fight, and there's a few other bits and pieces. But Ruiz Jr. has really done a good job for himself getting more money here, but that's not why I'm doing this video. Ruiz on social media saying, "I'm excited to announce my rematch with Anthony Joshua. In the first fight, I made history and became the first ever Mexican/American heavyweight champion of the world. I am grateful to Saudi Arabia for inviting me. I took it to AJ in the Big Apple, and I'm looking forward to ending his career in the desert. Don't miss this fight." And then he has a few words there in Spanish. So Ruiz Jr. looking forward to ending Anthony Joshua's career. And I got to say, this is the part of the build-up that I like much better than the whole sort of A-siding situation that we saw before, with Ruiz Jr. threatening not to take part in the rematch because he wanted it in America on his own terms because he was the champion, etc. We've all been through that situation in ad nauseum in recent weeks with various videos, but I much prefer this version of Ruiz Jr. talking about the actual fight. And says he's going to end Anthony Joshua's career. And there's a part of me that thinks that if Joshua, even though he sort of said publicly a loss doesn't define him, all that sort of stuff, he's sort of saying the right things as you would expect for a guy that's taking part in a rematch after he's lost, and it's going to effectively be the biggest fight of his career. There's a part of me that does wonder if Joshua is beaten again and beaten comprehensively. Is that actually going to damage him to the point where he might go, actually, I'm ready to hang it up. I've got all these other options and avenues that I can pursue within my life outside of boxing, because he's bigger than just a boxer now. He's become his own whole little brand. And sure, some of that will go away with another loss, and especially if it's another comprehensive loss, but he could probably pursue all sorts of things outside of boxing and still live a very comfortable and a very lucrative life, I'm sure. And if it's another devastating sort of loss, that might be just mentally too much for him. I mean, I think it would be a big thing to come back from, but I'm not saying he is going to lose, because obviously he's been a unified champion. He's beaten some of the best boxers in the heavyweight division. And there has been some commentary from, I think, some fans that don't want to give Joshua credit. They say that he's a manufactured champion. He had never fought anyone before Ruiz. But that really takes away the accomplishments of some of the guys that he had fought. He's got very good names on his record. I mean, let alone Vladimir Klitschko. You have Alexander Povetkin, Joseph Parker, Dillian White, Carlos Takam. There's a whole slew of guys on his resume that when you stack it up against anyone else in the heavyweight division today, it really does stack up well. So for, if people want to say he's done nothing in his career, he's a completely manufactured fighter, I'm just not going to accept that at all, because he has done a lot in the heavyweight division. And Andy Ruiz, for him, he's obviously building his legacy now. Joshua being on his record is a massive win. And for the guys that want to say Joshua is nothing, Well, then what is Ruiz then? If you're saying that Joshua is nothing, how can you give Ruiz Jr. credit for the first fight? I just think the whole argument is just silly. Anthony Joshua is obviously a quality fighter, and it's a quality win for Andy Ruiz Jr. Can he beat Anthony Joshua again? I think he can. He's got a very good chance of doing so, if he can mirror some of what he was doing in the first fight, and especially some of the stuff he was doing in the mid-rounds. I think it's often forgotten that in the 6th round, I think it was, he really started working Joshua to the body and started taking the stuffing out of him. And that was one of the things that really sort of did sap Joshua towards the end of that fight, and I think helped bring it to a conclusion. Ruiz Jr. did some very good work, and it was underappreciated. The shot in the 3rd round, sure, that changed the fight, and that was the pivotal moment in the fight, but he still had to get the job done, and he continued to try and break Joshua down over those remaining rounds in the fight. And the body work late in the fight, it was key to that. So if he can mix in more body work, and obviously if he can manage to catch Joshua again, you know, who knows what could happen. But similarly, I think we know that Anthony Joshua is going to probably fight a bit differently this time. There's not going to be the sort of rush to finish Ruiz Jr. off if he's hurt, because he knows Ruiz Jr. is just going to let his hands go. He's going to be looking for certain shots, including that left hook, and Joshua will need to be wary of it because he's been caught on the chin a number of times by fighters like Alexander Povetkin, Dillian White, and now Andy Ruiz Jr. from that left hook, and he's prone to being hurt by one. So I think he will come in with a more cautious, a more tentative game plan. I think he'll be looking to work behind the jab. I think he'll look to keep it long, and I think a lot of us thought he would look to try to do that to some extent in the first fight. He got a little careless in there, but there was also other points where, and we know Joshua says he likes to have tear-ups, he likes to be involved in a fight. Obviously when you're winning and you come out on the right side of the result, you can say those sorts of things, but he will need to really sort of minimize the sort of risks that he's going to be taking in this fight if he wants to beat Ruiz Jr. At the end of the day, a win is a win. He doesn't need to knock Ruiz Jr. out if he doesn't get the opportunity. Ruiz Jr. can go 12 rounds. He's gone 12 rounds in a championship fight before with Joseph Parker. So he's proved he's got a decent enough chin and engine to go all 12. So Joshua will have to be wary for that. And as we know, Joshua can gas a bit, so his fitness will need to be at peak performance for this fight, because Ruiz Jr., if Joshua starts slowing down, especially if he's looking to move more, I think Ruiz Jr. will fancy his chances later in the fight if Joshua becomes a bit more stationary and static. But I like this fight, and I like this rematch, and I like we can now start talking about elements of this fight. But in terms of some of the out-of-the-ring stuff, as I mentioned, there was some legal action that was launched by Matchroom, and here's a tweet by Mike Coppinger which sort of wrapping up some of what was actually happening. Matchroom/Eddie Hearn began legal process last week towards an injunction bracket along with damages bracket to enforce Ruiz Joshua rematch in Saudi Arabia. Powerhouse firm, and excuse me if I get this first bit wrong, Debevoise and Plimpton was retained. Lawsuit filed yesterday in New York. After agreement reached, suit withdrawn today. And there's an old saying, there's nothing that sharpens the mind like the side of the guillotine. So I think this legal action maybe has sped the process to a conclusion to reach a deal. And this is their real sort of, look, we're about to make this go in a very bad direction. The lawyers called in and no one wins in that situation. But Ruiz Jr. has done well for himself, and his advisors obviously got some more for him. Certain conditions that are now going to be in place for the fight. And, you know, I think having experienced officials and making sure that everything is above board or seen to be above board, along with stringent drug testing, is a good result for everyone involved. It makes it look like this event is actually a credible event as opposed to something haphazardly sort of slapped up in the desert, as I think some sort of expected. Even though the ground is going to be an open air venue, effectively haphazardly slapped up in the desert to some extent. I mean, they were still to build the open air stadium, so I think obviously it's going to be, you know, built for one purpose, this fight, but I'm sure it will end up doing the trick for the purpose that it is designed for. But I'm looking forward to this fight, this rematch, and it's good that some of the legal stuff is not going to be an issue. Ruiz Jr. is traveling to Saudi Arabia. All the right things that need to be in place look like they will be in place. Experienced referee, experienced officials, good drug testing, and we have a fight. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.